Today we're going over how to make a 5-paragraph essay. And we're not going to do the whole thing, we're just going to do a couple parts, because once you can figure out how to do the introduction and the first body paragraph, the rest of it's pretty much the same. So the first thing I need to do is I need to read my 2 articles. So if you haven't read the 2 articles yet, you probably remember them from class, but if you don't, go ahead and pause this video and click on the attachments and read through How the Taco Conquered America and the Heritage article. As you're reading these articles, think about if you have an opinion on whether or not food should be changed. Since our majority of our classes said that food shouldn't be changed, that's what I'm going to form for my thesis. Remember, the thesis is what the entire paper is going to be about. So my thesis is food shouldn't be changed because now I need to think of 3 reasons why food shouldn't be changed. And remember, these reasons need to be big enough where I can prove it using 2 pieces of evidence in my articles. So the 3 reasons I came up with are: it changes flavor, people's culture, and it gives us more variety. So each of these reasons will be what we put in our reason box. So reason 1 would be it changes flavor. Once we get to the reason 2 box, we would write it changes people's culture. Once we get to reason 3 box, we would write it gives us more flavor. Now, while we're on reason 1, and the next job we have to do is we have to find evidence. And remember, evidence comes from our article. And we have 2 articles we can use. And it doesn't matter which one we use as long as it proves that it changes flavor. So the article I'm going to use is How Taco Conquered America. So I'm looking through this article for a piece of evidence that tells me that it changes flavor. And the sentence that I spot that I'm going to use is this one right here, where it says, he concocted a taco sauce that was milder than a typical quaint Mexican sauce. And the next thing I need to do is I need to go back and I need to cite this article. And remember, we talked about there's 2 ways to cite an article. One way is we could use a title. Another way we could cite an article is use the author's last name. And since the author's last name is a lot shorter than the title of this article, I'm going to use the author's last name. So I'm going to cite it saying Tarshish says. Now I'm going to go back to my article and I can decide whether I want to quote it. In other words, I need quotation marks, so I'm going to say word for word what Tarshish said, or I can paraphrase it, which means I can change the words. I need to keep the same idea, but I can change the words. I think I'm going to paraphrase this because I can shorten it up a little bit and still get my point across. So I'm going to say Tarshish said, Bell designed a taco sauce that was milder than the original. Next thing I need to do is I need to come up with an explanation. So I need to prove something from my experience, or if I just want to explain, but I need to prove how this piece of evidence proves this reason. So I need to prove that this taco sauce becoming milder shows that changing food will change the flavor. So this is pretty obvious, pretty easy. So I'm going to kind of think back to something that I had where the flavor changed, and it reminds me of the microwave food. So I'm going to put, I know that microwave food has a different flavor than homemade food. In my opinion, homemade food tastes better. Next thing I'm doing is I'm doing the same things I did before, looking for another piece of evidence from our article to prove that changing food can change the flavor. So again, I can use either article. I could either use the taco article by Tarsus, or I could use the Swords article, which is the heritage article. I'm going to use the taco article because I spotted a place up top here where it talks about how the hamburger meat changed. And I'm going to underline the sentences where it says, at the time, most Americans avoided ground beef, which tended to be made up of spoiled meat, fat, parts of the animal body that nobody would eat. And then I'm also going to go down and then underline how it changed, how the flavor changed. So I'm going to underline this sentence where it says, to help customers overcome their fear of ground beef, diners were allowed to peer into the windows to watch hunks of fresh beef being ground into patties. So now I'm going back to my graphic organizer. Of course, I need to cite this text. I'm going to change it up a little bit. And I'm going to put, instead of Tarsus says, I'm going to put Tarsus writes, just vary it a little bit. And again, I can decide whether I'm going to quote this or if I'm going to paraphrase this, but since I used two separate sentences, I can combine these and shorten it up a little bit and still get my same point across, so I'm going to paraphrase it. So I'm going to write, Tarsus writes, how hamburger's flavor changed when it was brought to America. Notice how I left the guts and animal fat and stuff like that out, because I want to be consistent in proving that when food changes, it ruins a flavor. If I would have added that piece of information, I think my readers probably would have felt that this change was a good thing. So I want to leave that information out just to be consistent with my argument. Now I need to explain, again, and this comes from me, my background, my knowledge, doesn't come from the article, but I need to explain how our evidence proves that it changes flavor. If we change food, this reminds me of a time when my mom changed the flavor of pancakes. leaving out an ingredient. I liked the original version better. Okay, we're going to stop there on the graphic organizer. Like I said before, the next reason you get from your thesis, and then the second body paragraph, you just go through the same steps as you did here, proving your reason and giving explanations. Same thing with the third body paragraph. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make an introduction sentence. Which means we need to go back up and take a look at our thesis statement. But before we even get to our thesis statement, the first thing we need in an introduction sentence is a hook statement. A hook statement is the way to get the reader's attention. So remember, we could use one words, we could ask the reader a question. There's all kinds of hook statements we talked about during second quarter. Right now I'm gonna go ahead and use a couple words. So I'm gonna write crunch, crunch. This is the sound a taco makes while you are enjoying all the flavors. Now the next sentence I need is a summary sentence. This sentence doesn't have an opinion in it. It just summarizes the whole entire paper, kind of shows the reader where this paper is going. So I'm going to write something like, and you can ask a question, that's what I'm going to do. Have you ever wondered if an authentic taco is better than an Americanized taco? Next sentence we're going to write is our thesis sentence. And from here forward, all our sentences are pretty much going to come from our graphic organizer. So I'm going to write food shouldn't be changed because it changes flavor, people's culture, and it gives us more variety. Okay, introduction paragraph is finished. Now I'm ready for my first body paragraph. I start my first body paragraph out with reason 1, but remember we talked about in class I can't just put it changes flavor. I need to restate my thesis each time. So I'm going to put food shouldn't be changed because it changes flavor. Next sentence comes from evidence 1A. I'm going to put Tarshish says Bell designed a taco sauce that was milder than the original. Next thing I do is I go to exclamation 1A. I know that microwave food doesn't taste, food has a different flavor than the original food, or than homemade food. In my opinion, homemade food has a better flavor than the changed microwave food. Notice how I added a little bit more. It's okay to add more, take things away when you're writing. Remember, writing is an evolving process where each time you write, you're trying to improve it. So I feel like this sentence improved that a little bit, and when I proofread it, I might change it again. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move down to evidence 1B. It says Tarshish writes how hamburgers flavor changed when it was brought to America. Next thing I'm going to do is go down to exclamation 1b. This reminds me of a time when my mom changed the flavor of pancakes by adding, or by forgetting to add an ingredient. I liked the original flavor of the pancakes better than the changed version. Okay, body paragraph 1 is finished. Next thing I do is I go to body 2 paragraph, which would be in our graphic organizer, and you'd follow the same steps.